I'm here with Kate Mulvany from Mulvany Consulting. Kate, thank you for joining me today.
Delighted to be here.
You and I have been chatting recently a lot about flexibility, and it's very much the subject du jour. Um, when we chatted earlier, you drew a comparison with Internet of Things. Why do you think this time it's different, and what's changed?
Yeah, we were talking about how inevitably people get jaded about the promise of the next big thing.
Yeah.
And I think Internet of Things was the example I was using. For those people who remember, it was the prospect that all of our devices and assets and energy would all be intelligently controlled using data, internet connectivity. But it was also one of those examples of programs that never fully arrived. And there was a lot of effort that went into making these things real and tangible for consumers. But then there was a bit of burnout. And I think flexibility is almost the next generation of that. And I want to make sure that people don't miss the boat for the opportunity to influence what happens and also help really design a system that is right for customers, that's right for businesses, and that's right for people in their homes. So Internet of Things, even if that phrase gives you a bit of PTSD, I promise flexibility is here, it is live, and it is a great time to get involved.
Definitely. Having said all of that, Ofgem recently released some research which suggested that while consumers like the idea of flexibility, they're still not actually engaging with it in practice and making it happen. Why is there that disconnect, and what can we do to fix it?
I think the hinge that all of this sits upon is automation and passivity.
Yeah.
So consumers, by and large, and of course there'll be exceptions, but consumers actually like the output of flexibility. They like the idea of there being less reinforcement work on the network.
Yeah.
Their road's not going to get dug up. They like the idea of accessing cheaper prices. They like electrification. They like all of these things that will come from flexibility. But of course, they value their time. And one of the things we've learned over, particularly the last 5 years, is that somebody who understands what their hourly rate is in their job probably doesn't think, they're getting ample benefit from feeling like they've got a push message and have to go around switching off all their appliances. But the work that's come out in the last 6 months in particular, I think there's so much promise there, showing if it happens in the background, consumers can and will give informed consent, but it depends on that automation piece.
Yep.
So they're not worried about access or even convenience in the sense of how it's going to impact their lives. They, with a bit of education, with a bit of support, they will trust institutions to apply flexibility. But we are never going to be in a situation where it's worth paying the human in the home to take those actions.
Yeah. And that's the problem, is assuming that consumers will take those actions. I'm going to shift it up a level now and talk to you about the regulatory framework, because there's a wave of modifications coming through Elexon and the wider regulatory framework. We've seen a ramp up in this happening over the number of years anyway. But for somebody trying to navigate all of that, what are the one or two things that they generally need to focus on? What are the things that are really pressing around all of that regulatory chain?
So I think this depends on where your focus is in the system. So parties who are, generators, storage operators, investors, there are a couple of working groups that it is absolutely worth staying involved in. The work to coordinate the various local flexibility markets, for example.
Yeah.
This year is going to be really important for that. So there's a lot of maturity there.
Yeah.
But that idea that you can have a truly national portfolio, it's going to impact future siting decisions and revenue stacking. This is a really important year, but I do think it's easy to stay involved and understand the direction of travel. This is a great year. If you haven't already considered that national view, you're doing all the legwork yourself, looking at individual, DNO regions. It is going to get easier.
Sure.
I think if you're at the consumer end, the SSES, the appliance end of things, again, this is an exciting year, and you can just delve into that. The standards piece is leading a lot of the work, but there are broader and bigger swings coming out of the retail space from some suppliers who are innovating at scale, who are taking these products beyond early adopters,
Yeah.
the kind of people who like to run their lives on spreadsheets. You know, flexibility isn't just for them, it's for everybody.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on those. So I'd say unless you need to, for particular reasons, you absolutely can afford to drill into the area that's going to be most impactful for you in your work.
Very good. And quickly to finish up, we're looking at the amazing number of flexibility providers coming through this space, right? Everybody's got a product about flexibility at the moment. Do you think we're heading for major consolidation, and what does that mean?
Oh, so I actually, at some point there will be a consolidation. Some of it will be just normal, healthy, exits and regular business. What it's going to depend on, I think, is the price movement. So many of the flexibility innovators are tightly linked to market optimization, price optimization, wherever in the chain they sit. So if we see sudden price rises and sudden price drops, that could be a catalyst for some of that consolidation. Now, I think we are, that will happen at some point. I think as we sit here in June 2026, the war in the Middle East is going to determine an awful lot, as will potentially elections in November. There are a lot of driving factors. So a sudden movement in nearer term markets could see an exit from some parties. But actually, most companies I talk to have got a very realistic view of what range of outcomes could occur. Most of them are positioned, I would say, to ride out some volatility. It's just a question of duration. So be interesting to watch. Be a brave person who predicts the timing, but I do think it will follow a change in what we're seeing in the wholesale markets and secondary markets.
Brilliant. As ever, Kate, really interesting. Thanks ever so much.